Hey there! This video is going to be all about the brand new focus breathing correction feature in the Canon R6 Mark II. So this is a new feature for Canon, but it's been in a few Sony cameras, and it was debuted in the a7 IV, which came out about a year ago, but also in recent releases like the FX30 and the a7R5. So in this video, what I want to do is explain what focus breathing is, how we can update our gear and set it up to use it, and also test it out and see how good it is. All right, so first of all, let's talk about what focus breathing is. This occurs in almost all lenses to some degree, and some lenses have this worse than others. So what you'll notice here is that when you focus from close to far or from far to close, or if you're using autofocus and the subject is moving back and forth, you will see the focal length change of the lens as the focus changes from near to far or from far to near. And the way that you'll notice this is usually by looking at the background. You'll see the edges of the frame moving in or moving out, and hence it looks like the focus is breathing, hence focus breathing. And so this is an undesirable characteristic, and as a videographer or content creator, you will start to notice this more and more. And as I said, some lenses have it worse than others, and generally speaking, some of the best lenses are going to be cinema lenses. So it really comes down to the fact that most of us are using stills lenses for our video work, and that's because they're more inexpensive, they have autofocus, they're more readily available, and we probably already have them, and we can also use them for doing photography. So this is going on in almost every lens, and once you see it, you probably can't unsee it anymore, but for most people, they don't notice it. But as a videographer, it's something that is undesirable. But it's been really interesting because Sony introduced this about a year ago, and it's a really cool feature. And essentially the way it works is that it crops in just a little bit, and basically it crops in enough so when the focal length changes as you focus in or out, you won't see that anymore, so it takes care of it digitally. And this is really cool because we can use all the same lenses that we've already been using that have great optics and maybe aren't so great in terms of focus breathing, and it corrects it, so it's really cool. Now, the amount of crop that you'll get with this feature really depends on how bad the focus breathing is on each of those lenses. So if a lens has more focus breathing in it, then it'll crop a little bit more just to make sure that it's not going outside of those parameters so you don't see the focus breathing. But you don't have to worry about any of this because the camera and the software take care of all this for you. So when the R6 Mark II was released and announced, there are only 3 lenses that were capable of working with this new focus breathing correction. And I don't have any of these lenses to test out, but these are all RF lenses. And the first one is the 135 f1.8, which isn't even out yet, the 24 f1.8, and the 15 to 30 f4.5 to 6.3. So as I said, I wasn't able to test any of those out, but just recently there's been some new firmware, and there's a bunch of new lenses that are now capable of using focus breathing correction. And those are the 14 to 35 f4, the 15 to 35 f2.8, the 24 to 70 f2.8, the 70 to 200 f4, and the 70 to 200 f2.8. Now, there's one lens that I feel like is missing in this list, and that's the 24 to 105 f4L, which is a very common lens and actually is sold as a kit lens for the R6 Mark II. So I'm a little bit kind of confused about why they left that lens out. So this is a starting point. I hope they add more lenses, but this, as I said, is a good place to start, and a lot of people are using these lenses, including myself. All right, so let me show you how to get this set up in the camera, because when I first heard about the fact that it would only support a few different lenses, I figured when the updates came, it would come in terms of a firmware update to the body, but that's not true. You actually have to update each lens individually, and I want to show you how to do that because I don't think a lot of people have ever updated a lens before. So let me show you that. So in the camera, first of all, let me show you where this feature is. If you go under the camera menu here onto the 5th tab over, and we go to the lens aberration correction, you can see down here, there's the focus breathing correction. And when I click on it, it says correction not available. It's weird you can select enable even though it's not available. But anyways, this is where it is. It says it's not available because I haven't updated this lens yet. So there's a couple things we need to do. First of all, make sure you have a fully charged battery. That's going to be important. And also we need to, let's format our card here. So let's do that. So we go over to the wrench. And number 1, let's format our card. Okay, so now our card is formatted. We have a fully charged battery. Let's go. I'm going to go show you how to download the firmware update, how to get it on the card and get it into the camera. All right, so here we are on the computer, and I have the memory card inserted into the computer. So go to usa.canon.com/support if you're in the US. You can probably get this from any of the other countries' Canon pages, or you can just type in the product here. But this is a great place to start. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the lens I need to update, which is the RF 15 to 35. And here it is. So let's click on that. And I'm going to go down here to software and drivers under the downloads section. And if you scroll down here, you just have to select which operating system you're using. So I will put my system in here. I'm using a Mac. And here are the firmware updates for both Windows and Mac OS. And it's always good to check the date. So December 15th, 2022, this is the one that just came out. So I'm going to download the one for the Mac. So I'm going to agree to the terms and conditions and hit download. And you can see the download pop up down here. So I'm going to click on that, and this will open up a folder here on my desktop. So if I double click on that, here are the files. So there are some documentation files in here, but this is the update file. So here is my memory card. This is the one that I just formatted, so there's nothing on here. And I'm just going to drag this file into the memory card, and then we will eject the memory card, and we can put this into the camera. So I got the new lens firmware on the card, so let's put it in the camera here. And turn the camera on. And let's update this lens. So under the menu here, we're going to go to the wrench and page number 6. You can see here firmware. That's the firmware for the camera. As far as I know, there isn't a new firmware update yet for the R6 Mark II. But if you go in here, we're going to update the lens. And if you caught that before, we're putting version 1.0.8 on here. So we click on the lens. Current firmware is 1.07. Update the firmware. And that's the file that we just put on there. So let's update that. And there we go. Let that run. All right, update complete. That only took a couple minutes, not so bad. Okay, I'm gonna reset here. Let's go into the menu and see if this worked. And you can see here that it is available now. So this is where we'll enable this. So let's go outside and test it and see how it does. So I want to go outside to test this out because there's more distance behind me than there is inside of my studio. So we can test out how much the lens is breathing when you change the focus from near to far and from far to near. So I'm on the 15 to 35 and I'm at around 24 millimeters and f5.6. I don't want the background totally blurry so we can see what's going on here. So first of all, let's test this out with the focus breathing correction off. So right now it's turned off. And as I'm testing this out, what you want to do is take a look at the edges of the frame and see if they're moving in or out as it changes focus from near to far and vice versa. So first of all, I'll just test this out with just me moving back and forth a little bit and see if you're noticing any focus breathing going on. In my opinion, this lens is pretty well controlled, but all lenses have a little bit of focus breathing. So let me force it a little bit harder. I'm just going to jump in and out of the frame here so you can take a look and see how much it breathes. Now let me turn it on and see how well it does. So now I have focus breathing correction turned on, and let's take a look here as I move back and forth. How'd it do? So after taking a look at the footage that you just saw, I am pretty impressed with its performance, but also not that surprised. The first time I used this on the A7 IV when it was released, I was really impressed and really happy to see that basically the camera removed the issue of focus breathing. And so, as I said, I think it worked pretty well on this camera, and I'll probably be using it anytime that I have a lens that's supported. Now, I also noticed that the crop wasn't very much when I put it into that mode, and I think partly that's because the 15 to 35 doesn't have a lot of focus breathing built into the lens, and I'm assuming that the crop will be dependent on how much the lens breathes, and the camera knows that because it's the same company. It might also depend on not just the lens, but maybe the focal length you're at, so some more testing is probably needed, but I don't have every lens to test out as well. But I did notice this with the Sony system that some of the lenses have a lot more focus breathing, so when you enable that with certain lenses, it does crop in a little bit more. But you do have the option of turning it off. So if you don't want to deal with the crop, or for whatever reason you just need a certain focal length and you can't move the camera, then you can turn it off and just deal with focus breathing like you always have been before. So in my opinion, it works great. I'm gonna be using it, but there's a couple things I wanted to point out while I was using it, so let me show you those. So if you go into the menu system and turn it on like I showed you before, once you turn it on, the distortion correction is turned on and it's grayed out, so you can't actually adjust it because we're in the focus breathing correction mode. So just one of those things. I usually have the distortion correction turned on, but just wanted to point that out. Also, when you back out of here and in your shooting screen, you can also see that it's turned on. There's a little icon right here that shows you that the focus breathing correction is turned on. So overall, as I said, really impressed with this and really happy that's in here. I hope we see it in more lenses in the Canon system and also in other cameras coming out and other camera manufacturers implementing this. It would also be really cool to see if this is updated with other firmware updates from the other cameras. That'd be really cool too. It seems like a software thing, but again, I don't, design cameras, so I have no idea how complicated this is. But overall, super happy about it and glad to see it. If you are curious about how to set up your R6 Mark II, I made a full detailed video about that, which you should check out over here. Otherwise, hit subscribe for more cool content like this. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.